Hello, Kurt Miller here, and I'm going to be walking you through how to use our two CO2 lasers in the Warrior Workshop. The first thing we're going to do is decide whether we want to use our Nova 14, which is the big laser, or the Mira 9, which is our smaller laser. The processes are really similar on both these lasers, but there are a few differences. Number one, the bigger laser is more powerful, and the smaller laser is not quite as powerful. All right, for my project, I've decided to use our big Nova 14 laser just because it's the one that's available, and maybe the Mira 9 is busy or vice versa. Either one works. But first step is I'm going to come on over here and I need to figure out what material I'm going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this drawer, and in the top drawer I have all this 1/8 inch plywood. And it's totally okay to grab a piece that looks like this, that has already been lasered on. You do not need a fresh piece of wood. Our goal here is to get as much out of this wood as possible. So if there's even a small open space that could be useful, please use it. Do not grab a fresh sheet of wood unless you absolutely need to. Now looking on down here, we have multiple different drawers of different sizes. So maybe the top drawer doesn't have what you want. Look in the next drawer. Or maybe this one. And as you go down, you can see that we're actually going to get to thicker wood. For example, right down here, this wood is 1/4 inch or 0.25 inches, which I only recommend cutting on the Nova 14 or the bigger laser. And at the very bottom, we have some 1/2 inch sheets. Again, as a beginner, you're not really going to be working with 1/2 inch plywood all that much. All right, so I'm going to take my piece of wood here that has plenty of space for my holiday ornament. I'm going to bring it over to this laser. I'm going to set it on this desk. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up this laser. Now the lid does have some hydraulic arm supports, but please be careful, not necessarily lifting it, but dropping it. This lid can drop pretty quickly, so you want to make sure you're always grabbing the handle right here, especially when you're closing it, because I do not want this top piece of glass to break. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my piece of wood on the laser bed. Now you'll notice that this piece of wood has a little bit of it is warped slightly. And if it's just a little bit warped, that's not really that big of a deal. But if you have a piece of wood that is really kind of pulled up in the corners or really twisted or lifted on one side, it might be a good idea to come on over here to this little bin where we have these 3D printed pins that you can use. I'll just demonstrate how to use it right here. Where you take one of these 3D printed pins and you push it between the honeycomb. I can actually do this. There you go. Push it between the honeycomb and push it all the way down on your piece of wood to keep it clamped down. But for this job, I don't really need it, so I'm going to put it away. Let's keep it simple. All right, so I have my laser in place, or excuse me, my piece of stock in place, and I'm going to be aiming for lasering this section of wood right around here. It's time to turn on the laser. Very simple. As I come on over here, and I turn the switch. After the switch has been turned on, the laser head or gantry will move to the back right-hand corner, which is the home position for the laser. And it'll take a little bit. And once it's gone to the home position, it should zoom right on back to its last origin point, which was somewhere over here. And don't worry, we can totally move the laser head around wherever we need to. As that's warming up, probably the next thing you want to check is this little display right here has an extra fan to help suck the smoke out of the laser as it's cutting. So I'm going to go ahead and come over to this display and I'm going to turn it all the way up. You can see it says set to. I'm going to turn that all the way up to 10. And that means that our little fan right back here is pulling more smoke out of the laser than just the blower that's in the back of the actual laser. All right, cool. Now this is important. Every single time that we use the laser, you want to double check that it's in focus. And the way that I do that is I come over to the control panel and I use these buttons right here, the X, so it's moving. I can hold it down, and then Y towards us. And then I go roughly over the area that I'm going to laser. And then the next step is to hit this button that says focus. I'm going to click this. And the laser just touches off of my material and then pulls back a little bit, and it's now perfectly in focus. After I focus the laser, I'm going to go ahead and move the laser head out of the way because I'm going to come on over to this computer that's attached to the laser. And sorry about filming a computer screen. It's the easiest way to do this. So here I have Lightburn up, and you can see I already created my simple ornament. And just as a reminder, over here, I checking the layers. I have fill for black for Happy Holidays, and red is line, and that's 30 speed, 80 power, which means that the red one should cut and the black layer should engrave at 300 speed and 40 power, which looks great. Then I'm going to go ahead and go over and take my mouse over to camera control, and if it's grayed out, you just have to kind of like click none and then click back on Eon camera. And I'm going to select update overlay and check out what happens here. If I zoom out a little bit, it took a picture of my actual laser bed. I'm going to take my job, my ornament, I'm going to click and drag it over my material. Now there's several different ways to do this. This is just the easiest way, I think, for students. And now my ornament is over this open area on my piece of wood here. So that looks good. Next step is I want to make sure that it's in the right place because the camera isn't 100% accurate. So I'm going to click frame and watch the laser frame roughly. Ooh, okay, interesting. So I'm glad I clicked frame. Now if you notice, it just framed a way bigger area than my ornament. And so this tells me something really important. If I zoom in over here, I notice that for whatever reason, there's a random piece of drawing that I didn't delete from the last job. So I'm going to delete that. I selected it. I'm going to move over here and I'm going to click frame again. And I want to make sure it's framing roughly the area that my ornament should be in. All right, so that's good. Perfect. I'm glad I caught that. The next thing I'm going to do before I actually click go is I'm going to take my mouse and I'm going to come on up here to preview. And then I can see a preview of what the job's going to do. I'm going to click play and it'll show me exactly how this thing's going to go down. So it's going to take me roughly a minute to do this job. It's going to engrave for a little bit and then it's going to cut out my ornament. I click OK. Another little piece of advice is if you're ever unsure about your power and speed settings, do little testers in the corner or in some little spot that isn't really being used for anything else. Test out your settings. Another thing that you can do is you can come on over here and get a sample card like this to get a rough idea of what you want in your job. So for example, I'm using the Nova. I have an 1/8 inch plywood. If I want a light engraving, I'll do 300 speed at 30 power and make sure I have it on fill. If I want to cut something, I want to make sure that I have it at least 20 speed and 100 power. That's how this works. Now that everything looks ready to go, I'm going to come on over to my laser door. I'm going to carefully shut this. I'm going to come back to my computer. And right here, I'm going to click the start button. And I'm going to stand by and make sure that my laser is doing what I want. So first it's going to do the engraving, which is awesome. And after it's done with the engraving, it's going to do the cut. Now I'm not going to film this whole thing, but if for whatever reason things are not looking good, don't be afraid to hit stop or pause, or if something really bad's happening, The button that you want to hit is right on the side, and this is the E-stop. Don't be afraid to hit this if things are going wrong. One more thing, you want to make sure that while you're running your laser, you have the squirt bottle of water close by, just in case something catches on fire and you need to squirt it out. So this is what we'd use to put out any little fire. Actually, our job's going to be pretty quick, so let's film this. So now it's doing the line or cut. Looks good. All right. Now that it did the cut, we're going to give the laser a sec to get all of the fumes and smoke out of the back of the machine and out through the vents right here. Okay? So we're going to give it a sec to get all the smoke out. And sometimes I even lift the lid a little bit to let some more fresh air in before I fully lift it, get the smoke to get pulled out. You can see there's a little bit of smoke coming out right there. So here it is. Got my job. I'm going to get the scraps out. And here is my ornament. Now what you'll notice is that this has a lot of smoke residue on it. And it doesn't look great. So I'm going to come on and walk over here to my water station. And it's all right if it gets wet. I'm going to go ahead and just rinse it off a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my sponge and I'm going to just lightly scrub my job to get all this residue off, and it should come off right away. Okay, this is hard to do with one hand, so it's not going to be perfect. Scrub it off, give it a final rinse. If you want, you can kind of scrub the backside if that's important to you. Rinse it off. Pat it dry with a paper towel. And we have our ornament. Looks pretty good. One or two final quick notes. Say for whatever reason that it still has a bunch of smoke residue, don't be afraid to come on over here, and hopefully these garage doors will be open if you need it. But don't be afraid to come on over and grab a battery and a power sander and 120 grit sandpaper, attach it to the power sander, lining the holes up. And then don't be afraid to sand your work too. Now don't go too crazy because sometimes you can sand through some layers, but a nice sand with 120 grit sandpaper a lot of times will make your projects look even better. So again, 120 grit, power sander, battery, do it outside. When you're done, put all of your power tool stuff away in this Makita corner, and then if the laser is no longer being used, power it off. If you have any scrap materials, make sure you put them back into the storage zone and clean up your station. That's it.